Absolutely. Here's episode 2 of Father and Son. Race Against Daylight, Season 17. Swamp People expanded into a cinematic narrative of around 600 words without subheadings. The swamp awoke under a heavy gray sky, the morning light diffused through low-hanging clouds and thick mist. Clint and Hunter pushed their boat into the narrow waterways, moving cautiously yet with urgency, knowing the clock was their constant adversary. Yesterday's success lingered in the back of their minds, but today brought new challenges. The water had risen overnight, swallowing familiar paths and creating hidden traps beneath the murky surface. Hunter's hands tightened on the ropes, his excitement tempered by the weight of responsibility. Clint could feel the tension radiating from his son, but he also sensed the spark of determination beginning to burn brighter. The first obstacle came quickly. A sudden current pushed the boat toward a cluster of submerged trees, their jagged roots threatening to tear the hull apart. Hunter hesitated, frozen by fear, and Clint's voice cut sharply through the mist. "Move, son." Now. Panic surged through Hunter, but instinct took over as he followed his father's commands, narrowly avoiding disaster. Clint exhaled, tension easing slightly, but he knew the swamp would not forgive mistakes for long. Every minute lost meant fewer opportunities to track the gators before the sun climbed too high and forced them to retreat. They moved deeper into the swamp, threading through winding channels and past thick mats of vegetation, each turn a calculated risk. Clint began teaching Hunter a new technique for spotting gators, reading the subtle ripples in the water, the tiny disturbances along the mud banks, the faint bubbles that hinted at creatures lurking just beneath the surface. Hunter's eyes sharpened, and his movements grew more confident, though still imperfect. The father noticed his son's growth and felt a flicker of pride, mingled with the ever-present anxiety that only the swamp could instill. Suddenly, a low, ominous rumble of thunder echoed through the cypress trees, signaling the approach of a storm. Heavy raindrops began to spatter the water, quickly turning into a drenching downpour. The current intensified, pushing them off course and making navigation nearly impossible. Clint's voice cut through the roar of the rain, guiding Hunter as they struggled to keep the boat steady. Lightning illuminated the silhouette of a massive gator, its eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. Hunter froze for a moment, mesmerized and terrified, and Clint snapped, "Focus, son. You've got this." With careful precision, they set their trap near the inlet, the storm whipping around them like a living creature. Hunter's hands shook as he handled the ropes, but Clint's calm instructions kept him steady. The gator approached, cautious yet relentless, drawn by the bait they had carefully prepared. Time seemed to slow as the creature tested the trap, circling and watching. Hunter's heart pounded, sweat mixing with rain on his face, and for a brief moment, he thought the monster would escape. Clint's eyes locked on his son's, silently urging him to trust what he had learned. Then, with a swift motion, Hunter pulled the ropes just as Clint had instructed, and the trap held. The gator thrashed violently, and the boat rocked under its weight, but they had done it. Hunter let out a gasp of exhilaration, relief flooding through him as Clint offered a rare, proud smile. "That's how it's done," Clint said, voice steady despite the chaos around them. Yet, the swamp had more tests in store. In the distance, another boat appeared, rival hunters who had spotted their movements. The competition was closing in, and the race against daylight was far from over. As they struggled to keep the gator secure in the rising storm, father and son shared a glance, an unspoken acknowledgement of the trust and teamwork developing between them. The swamp was merciless, but in that fleeting moment of victory, Clint knew Hunter was beginning to become more than just his apprentice. He was becoming a partner, capable of facing the challenges of the swamp head-on. Yet, with the storm intensifying and rivals closing in, Clint knew this was only the beginning. The daylight was still against them, and the swamp would demand even more in the hours to come. If you want, I can expand episode 3 next in the same style, 600 words, keeping the tension, cinematic suspense, and father-son dynamic flowing perfectly. Do you want me to continue with episode 3? Absolutely. Here's episode 3 of Father and Son. Race Against Daylight, Season 17. Swamp People expanded to around 600 words in a cinematic, flowing style without subheadings. The swamp was thick with fog as Clint and Hunter pushed deeper into the uncharted channels, the early morning mist curling around the cypress knees like ghostly fingers. Time was slipping away, and the sunlight had barely begun to pierce the gray canopy above. The father-son duo moved cautiously, the water reflecting their tense faces and the twisted trees that loomed overhead. Every ripple and splash could signal the presence of a gator, and Clint's eyes darted constantly, reading the signs of the swamp with practiced precision. Hunter had grown braver since yesterday, but the vastness and unpredictability of the swamp still tested him at every turn. As they navigated a narrow passage, Hunter spotted a massive shadow beneath the water, a gator far larger than any they had seen before. He froze, fear and excitement mixing in his chest, and Clint's hand shot out to steady him. "Remember what I taught you," Clint murmured, his voice steady, almost soothing against the backdrop of distant bird calls and the occasional splash. "The big ones are dangerous. Take it slow, don't rush." Hunter nodded, gripping the ropes tighter, and together they followed the creature silently, weaving through thick vegetation that scraped against the sides of their boat. Every movement had to be precise, every breath measured. Suddenly, the boat struck something submerged, tossing them slightly and sending their carefully planned strategy into chaos. Clint cursed under his breath, glancing at Hunter to make sure he was steady. "Stay calm, son. We improvise," he said, pulling the boat free from the hidden debris. Hunter swallowed hard, nodding, and felt a rush of adrenaline. He realized that in the swamp, the plan was never fixed. Survival and success demanded quick thinking and nerves of steel. The gator, sensing disturbance, began to shift, thrashing the water around its massive body. Time was now critical, and every second counted against them as daylight slowly climbed. Clint directed Hunter to position the trap in just the right spot, explaining the subtle details of currents, water depth, and gator behavior that could make the difference between success and disaster. Hunter's hands shook, but he followed instructions with growing confidence, adjusting the ropes and bait with a careful precision he hadn't yet mastered before. The gator lingered, massive eyes gleaming, and for a moment it seemed almost aware of their intentions. Clint's voice broke the silence, calm but commanding, guiding Hunter through the final steps. The tension was unbearable, each heartbeat echoing through the quiet swamp, the mist making every sound sharper, every movement more dangerous. Then, as if in a cinematic slow-motion moment, the gator struck, its immense power shaking the boat. Hunter reacted instinctively, pulling the ropes. Exactly as Clint had shown him. The trap held. The gator thrashed violently, water spraying in all directions, but they had succeeded. Hunter's chest heaved with adrenaline, a mixture of fear, triumph, and awe. Clint's hand rested briefly on his son's shoulder, a rare gesture of pride and encouragement. "Good job," he said simply, but the weight of those words carried everything he felt. Hunter had earned his first real victory in the swamp, proving he could handle the danger and chaos of gator hunting. Even in the moment of triumph, Clint's eyes scanned the surrounding waters. Shadows flickered in the mist, rival hunters, silent observers, and competitors ready to steal an advantage. The swamp was unforgiving, and every victory came with new threats. Clint knew they had to move quickly, securing their catch and preparing for whatever the day would throw at them next. Hunter, still trembling from the encounter, felt a surge of confidence and understanding. He was no longer just learning, he was participating, surviving, and contributing. As the sun began to rise higher, casting dappled light across the reflective water, Clint and Hunter pushed forward, ready for the next challenge. The swamp had tested them, the gator had humbled them, and the race against daylight was far from over. If you want, I can expand episode 4 next in the same cinematic, 600-word style, keeping the suspense, storms, and father-son tension high. Do you want me to continue with episode 4? Absolutely. Here's episode 4 of Father and Son. Race Against Daylight, Season 17, Swamp People expanded to around 600 words in a cinematic, flowing narrative without subheadings. The swamp was alive with movement as Clint and Hunter set out under a gray, churning sky, the air thick with humidity and the scent of wet earth. The storm from the previous day had left the waters higher and more treacherous, the channels narrower, and the mud banks slick and unstable. Clint had been watching Hunter closely, noting the subtle growth in his son's confidence, yet knowing that the swamp had a way of humbling even the most skilled hunters. Time was slipping away, daylight creeping higher, and the stakes were higher than ever. They were behind schedule, and rival hunters were already cutting through the misty waters, marking their territory with aggressive precision. Early on, Clint decided they would split up briefly, covering more ground to increase their chances of spotting a massive gator rumored to be lurking in the deeper reaches of the swamp. Hunter's heart pounded with both excitement and anxiety. Alone in the dense waterway, he felt the full weight of responsibility, knowing that a single misstep could end the hunt, or worse, put them in danger. The water moved silently beneath him, and every ripple, every shadow, every subtle disturbance could signal the presence of the creatures they sought. He remembered his father's lessons: patience, observation, and timing. Slowly, deliberately, Hunter began to apply them, moving with careful stealth, his hands steady on the ropes, his eyes scanning the murky depths for signs of life. Meanwhile, Clint maneuvered through another channel, his mind constantly calculating currents, depth, and gator behavior. He had his own share of challenges, avoiding submerged logs and debris while keeping his trap hidden from view. The swamp demanded every ounce of skill and experience, and even Clint, seasoned veteran of countless hunts, could feel the pressure mounting. Suddenly, a distant sound, an unnatural splash, alerted him to another hunter approaching, rival eyes watching, ready to steal any advantage. Clint knew he had to act fast. With careful precision, he secured his traps and readied for the confrontation that he sensed was inevitable. Hunter's moment of truth came when he spotted a huge gator lurking near a tangle of cypress roots. The beast was massive, its tail cutting the water like a scythe, and its eyes glinting with intelligence and raw power. Hunter's breath caught, fear mingling with exhilaration. Following every command his father had drilled into him, he set the trap, adjusting the ropes and bait with trembling hands but unwavering focus. The gator circled, testing the waters, sizing them up as if aware of the trap laid before it. Hunter held his ground, heart racing, sweat and rain mixing on his face. Suddenly, the storm that had been brewing erupted. Thunder cracked overhead, lightning illuminating the swamp in jagged flashes, rain hammering down on the boat. The gator lunged, and the trap caught it mid-motion, the boat rocking violently as the massive creature thrashed in its bonds. Hunter's fear was replaced by a surge of adrenaline and triumph as he held his position, pulling the ropes with strength and precision. Clint appeared beside him just in time, securing the gator and stabilizing the boat, the two of them moving in sync like a well-oiled team despite the chaos around them. As the storm subsided, Clint and Hunter caught a brief moment to breathe, their eyes meeting in mutual understanding. The swamp had tested them relentlessly, rival hunters had circled like predators, and the elements had tried to drive them back. But together, they had prevailed, the gator secured and the day's challenges partially conquered. Yet Clint knew the race against daylight was not over. With hours remaining and rivals closing in, he glanced at the sky, already calculating the next move, knowing that the swamp would demand more courage, skill, and trust between father and son before the sun finally set. If you want, I can expand episode 5 next in the same cinematic, 600-word style, bringing the season to a thrilling, high-stakes conclusion with father-son bonding, gator captures, and sunset showdown drama. Do you want me to continue with episode 5? Absolutely. Here's episode 5 of Father and Son. Race Against Daylight, Season 17, Swamp People expanded to around 600 words in a cinematic, flowing narrative without subheadings. The swamp glowed with the last pale light of day, the sun low and smeared across the horizon like liquid gold. Clint and Hunter pushed their boat through the murky channels, both tense and determined, knowing that the race against daylight had reached its final, critical hours. The water was higher than usual, swirling with currents that threatened to push them off course, while debris from the earlier storms floated like silent obstacles waiting to strike. Clint's eyes never left the water, scanning for the faintest ripple, the slightest movement, while Hunter mirrored his father's focus, hands steady on the ropes, muscles tense with anticipation. Every second counted, and the giant gator they were hunting now seemed almost like a phantom, hiding in the shadows of the cypress trees. Hunter was leading more of the effort now, moving with a confidence that had grown over the past 4 days. Clint watched him carefully, pride tempered by caution. The swamp had a way of humbling even the bravest, and one misstep could spell disaster. They maneuvered closer to a deep inlet, where the water was calm but deceptively treacherous, and Hunter spotted it, a massive gator, larger and more menacing than any they had faced that week. Its scales glistened in the fading light, and its eyes seemed almost intelligent, sizing up the intruders in its domain. Clint gave a subtle nod, signaling Hunter to take the lead. Every heartbeat seemed to echo in the quiet of the swamp as father and son prepared for the final capture, the culmination of their race against daylight. The gator began to circle, wary and deliberate, and Hunter followed the lessons Clint had drilled into him, positioning the trap with careful precision. The ropes were taut, the bait in place, and every movement measured, timed to perfection. Clint's hands hovered near the edge of the boat, ready to assist, ready to intervene, but he trusted Hunter now, seeing in him a skill that had transformed over the past week. The creature lunged suddenly, thrashing violently in the shallow water, testing their nerves, testing their timing. Hunter reacted instinctively, pulling the ropes with strength and focus, securing the massive gator with a combination of courage and skill that even Clint couldn't help but admire. For a moment, silence fell over the swamp, broken only by the heavy breathing of the father and son and the splashing of water from the trapped gator. Clint clapped Hunter on the shoulder, a rare and genuine gesture of pride. "You did good," he said simply, but the weight behind the words conveyed everything he felt. Hunter's eyes shone with exhilaration and relief, the culmination of days of practice, mistakes, lessons, and triumphs now coming together in a single moment of victory. Yet there was no time to linger. The sun continued its descent, and the swamp had more demands for those who dared to challenge it. Rival hunters were nearby, shadows among the cypress trees, watching, waiting for an opportunity to steal an advantage. Clint and Hunter moved quickly, securing their catch, navigating through twisting channels and shallow waters with precision honed from years of experience. Every turn, every stroke of the oar, every adjustment of the ropes mattered. The swamp was unforgiving, and daylight was slipping fast. But as they reached the safety of a wider channel, the gator finally subdued, Clint allowed himself a small, rare smile. In the fading light, father and son reflected on the journey, the dangers faced, and the lessons learned. Hunter had transformed from an eager but inexperienced boy into a capable and confident partner, able to stand beside his father in the unforgiving heart of the swamp. Clint realized that the race against daylight had not only tested their skill but had strengthened their bond in ways no words could express. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the water in shades of fire and gold, they looked ahead, ready to face whatever challenges the swamp would bring next, together. The day had been won, the gator captured, and a father and son had proven that courage, trust, and determination could conquer even the most relentless of swamps. If you want, I can compile all 5 episodes into a single cohesive Season 17 script with cinematic pacing, cliffhangers, and dramatic beats ready for YouTube narration or storytelling. This way, it will read seamlessly as a full season. Do you want me to do that?